Hello there, everyone, and welcome to GamePoints episode 351. Your weekly get together, we talk about recent gaming news. As always, your host, Dear Brand, and tonight we seem to have some Witcher problems going on at the new game. May or may not be suffering some issues. There are some layoffs at Twitch that just recently happened. Respawn is expanding, and more. But first, I want everyone here to know this is an audience interactive podcast. So if you're watching us here live at Twitch TV/GamePoints, or later over at Rumble, BitChute, YouTube, whatever it may be, feel free to join in the conversation with any questions, comments, concerns. Just try to keep them germane to the topics on hand. And of course, if you like what you see here, you know what streamers want. Moving on to the first topic of the day. This here is via GameSpot. This article and all articles that I will refer to will be linked down below in the description if you want to read them on your own, and I do highly recommend it. Headline: New Witcher game project Sirius is undergoing some changes. It seems like they might be rescoping the size of the game and not in a positive direction. If you recall, CD Projekt Red recently announced a whole plethora of Witcher games coming, including a remake of the first one, the hereto little known about fourth Witcher game, and a couple of side stories as well. This is going to be affecting one of those side stories, the one that was known as Project Sirius. I think they're all named after stars. I think there's like Sirius and Polaris and Canis Major, I think. Don't quote me on that one. To the article itself. The company announced today, March 20th, so that would have been yesterday as this recording, that the new Witcher game in development at the Molasses Flood in Boston underwent an evaluation of its scope and commercial potential against the original concept. The Molasses Flood, by the way, is a smaller indie team. They're most famous for doing the Flame and the Flood, I believe that game was called. Continuing on with the article. Based on the evaluation, CD Projekt decided to take an impairment allowance of close to $10 million. Video game business reporter Game Over 30 said the following: that CD Projekt's move here is just a complete scrapping of the existing versions of Project Sirius. CD Projekt's statement went on to say that the company will now work on, quote, formulating a new framework for this project. That does not sound good. Wrapping things up here, a spokesperson for CD Projekt told GameStop the following: our current focus is ensuring that Project Sirius is aligned to the strategy of CD Projekt Group. At this point in time, we are neither providing insight into the evaluation of the project nor potential future frameworks thereof, end quote. Meaning that it seems everything is on the table for this relatively unknown project, up to and including cancellation. This is unfortunate, especially if you are looking forward to this from the Molasses Flood. I don't have any special love for that development team, but I know a few people that really enjoyed what they put out there. And it's never fun to have a project canceled on you. So don't think I'm like trying to dig at the people working at the Molasses Flood. It's just not my style of game that I would expect from The Witcher. But they could be doing something entirely different as well. We just don't know because they've been very tight-lipped about what Project Sirius is going to be, other than that it's coming. However, as we're going to talk about with many other stories today, the global economy is going through a rather significant hiccup at the moment. Many companies are going to be tightening their belts, trimming the fat, as it were, and all those other friendly euphemisms for firing people, canceling projects, getting rid of things they don't think will turn enormous profit, or removing risk from their portfolios. That is happening across the board, not just in the gaming sector, and it seems that Project Sirius is probably falling victim to that. What this is going to be doing, however, I don't know. As the article says, it suggests a complete scrapping of the current existing version of Sirius. What that means, it could be anything. It could be them going, this isn't going to work at all, make it smaller. It could be, we're changing focus from genres, do this now instead. It could be the first step in just shutting the whole thing down. Or it could just be them rebooting the entire thing and going, let's go in this direction now. We don't know. So try not to read too much into this. However, it is just another grain of sand in the heap of turbulent development that we're seeing across the board and have been seeing across the board, not just caused by the few years worth of working at home and all that, but actual economic realities of the situation where people are just suddenly finding themselves out of money or desperately needing to trim workforces. as what happened with Twitch as we move on to our next story here. This here is posted by Dan Clancy on the Twitch blog. Dan Clancy, for those who don't know, is going to become who's going to become the CEO of Twitch. He is also the president of Twitch right now. They recently lost their CEO, who was I think he was the last of the original founding crew. That person bounced ship. Dan Clancy's taken over, and one of his first things he's doing is firing almost 400 people. To Clancy's post. Today, Clancy, shared with the Twitch employees that we've made a difficult decision to reduce the size of our workforce, which results in us having to say goodbye to just over 400 people. As a company focused on building community together, the decision was incredibly difficult and one we did not make without considerable thought. And then he goes on to essentially say, hey, we're passionate, we're here to build trust and nurture our team, etc. Your typical corporate bullshit when there's layoffs to make them sound more gentle than they actually are. But once again, the reality of the situation is Twitch, like so many other tech companies out there, are at the barrel of a gun at the moment. Twitch especially is having a big problem maintaining talent as their bigger names are getting poached by other streaming services out there that offer them a bigger cut of the pie. Furthermore, Twitch has been beset with problems from both political aisles, left and right, over the past couple of years. It doesn't seem there isn't a month that goes by without at least some mid-grade controversy at Twitch, either it being not adhering the rules to everyone, aka allowing certain streamers getting away with things that other streamers wouldn't, or harassment issues. They are just being besieged on all fronts. And I would not be surprised if you see even more layoffs at Twitch, because with all those issues, with them bleeding talent, with some of the oldest members jumping ship, and just the general economic malaise currently facing, well, the globe, I wouldn't be surprised if Amazon shuts the entire thing down one day, forcing everyone on this lovely platform I'm streaming from live to go over to places like YouTube or, geez, what else is out there right now? Mixer went kaboom a few years back, and there's a myriad of other smaller ones. Facebook gaming, who the hell watches that? I guess YouTube might have to be the new home, but I don't like YouTube. The future of streaming is kind of fucked. Hate to say it, but there we are. As I have, there isn't a week that has gone by over the past few months that I have not had to announce layoffs in our industry, at least to some degree. And as I always say, they are not going to be the last. I expect more people at Twitch to lose their jobs. I expect another 10% reduction in headcount there, if not more. That's where we're at right now. So, as always, especially if you work in the tech sector, any tech sector, not just games, but Microsoft, Apple, Tesla, get your resumes in order. Spruce them up. Have them ready to go at a moment's notice, because the axe is going around and it is not going to stop any time soon. Fortunately, there are some places that are still expanding. As we jump to GameIndustry.biz for this next story here, it looks like Respawn is going to be opening up a third studio, mainly to support Apex Legends for the next 10 to 15 years. Once again, this story and all stories that I am referring to will be provided down in the description down below, or over at our Discord page, which you can also have a link to down there somewhere. To the article itself. The ongoing popularity of Apex Legends has caused Respawn to open up its third studio, the company announced. Originally founded by former Call of Duty developers and debuting with military shooter Titanfall in 2014, later working on Star Wars Jedi series, Respawn is best known for Apex Legends, a battle royale that began life as a spin-off of Titanfall. While the studio continues to gain attention with its upcoming Star Wars game, Jedi Survivor, which I believe is out in a few weeks. I want to say it's end of April. I don't have its date memorized. It's Apex Legends that's driving growth, and that game has prompted the firm's new branch in Madison, Wisconsin. An odd place. I can't think of any other developer in Madison, Wisconsin. If there is one, let me know down below, please. While the latest studio may contribute to other Respawn products in the future, the initial focus will be support Apex Legends. The official announcement describes Respawn Wisconsin. There we go. Respawn Wisconsin as being dedicated to the live services development of Apex Legends. But Burnell is quick to stress that his branch is not some remote live ops department. It's an expansion of the core Apex development team, working hand in hand with the studios in Los Angeles and Vancouver. He also says it's essential to helping the company maintain its cadence of new Apex Legends seasons every 90 days. Therein is both the blessing and the curse of a live service game. The blessing is, of course, that you're constantly getting bombarded with new content, meaning that the studios are getting more and more money for every game they sell. They don't just sell the one $60 game and be done with it. There's the battle passes, there's the cosmetics, there's the advertising in some cases. There are boosters and skins and God knows what else, the dreaded loot box, even though you really don't find those too much anymore. It's a nonstop source of revenue. However, the curse is your players are content ravenous. They will devour what you put out, and quickly at that, meaning that you are now forever stuck building content for one game. Now, Respawn's able to pull it off. They're big enough to where they can actually open up a second, or in this case, third studio to support solely the ongoing development of their one game. And I would not be surprised if 2/3 of Respawn actively is only working on Apex Legend, with the other third working on, well, whatever they want. In Respawn's case, that would be Star Wars Jedi Survivor. But it also shows the dangerous side of this too. If, for example, Apex Legends ever stops being profitable, or people move on to the next big thing, this studio goes bye-bye. I know it's impossible to think that one day League of Legends might not be the massive success that it is, but if that ever stops being huge, Riot's gone almost overnight, which is why I think they see the writing on the wall and they're trying to branch out into different genres. With what is it? The Skeleton King, or they have those other games that they're trying to test out to see if they can't at least get a bigger base that isn't reliant on just one game. And I know it's kind of odd to think of Respawn just disappearing overnight one day, but that can happen. Trends fall off very quickly in video games, and one disastrous quarter can be enough to tank an entire studio if that one studio is completely reliant on one property. It's dangerous to put yourself in that position. And it also shows a little bit of desperation as more and more studios and publishers are trying to become their one-trick pony studio, where they focus all of their resources every year into something, hoping that's success. Because if it's not, the other satellite stuff isn't going to be enough to sustain it. I think Ubisoft is a good example of this. Assassin's Creed was their big cash cow, but they've kind of dried up on that. Now, they had Far Cry for a while too, but those two titles can only sustain you for so long. And as the player base starts to wane for some of those, they've had to go back to the drawing board a few times, reinvigorate them. In the case of Assassin's Creed, they had Odyssey, Origins, and Valhalla, which seems to be revitalizing that franchise. But I think you're starting to see the fatigue set in again. It's very dangerous to devote so much of your studio to one game. And even the titans like Respawn can fall because of the hubris to it. And no, I didn't really mean that to be a Titanfall pun, but here we are. Hopefully, however, they do maintain a good steady stream of content. 10 to 15 years, though. Are we going to be playing Apex Legend in 10 to 15 years? Maybe like an Apex Legends 2 or even 3 by that time? I don't know. That's another thing, too, is that you start to stagnate. Are people even going to care about Battle Royale games 10 to 15 years from now? Back in the early to mid 90s, one of the bigger genres on PC was the space sim. XCOM, Free Space, Wing Commander, etc. No one really plays that now outside of a niche group of people. Times change, and so do tastes and styles and what people like to play. This feels really, really dangerous. But hopefully, Respawn can do it. If there's any team out there that can, I actually have a lot of faith in Respawn. So hopefully this pays off for them. But that said, it is also very nice to see a studio expanding in these times, because I know I've been a bit of an economic doomsayer, rightfully so, in my opinion, for the past few months. So whenever I see a studio expanding or jobs going up, I'd like to mention it here, and hopefully some of you might have lost yours over the past few months and find a home in Madison, Wisconsin. The jokes aside, I it's a major city. I'm sure it's lovely. I have no issue against it. It's just odd. Anyways, moving on. It seems like we might have a little bit more of a narrowed down release schedule for one of. I just want to make sure we have our stories right here. Yes, one of our bigger games coming out this year. This here is via Video Game Chronicle. PlayStation's Spider-Man 2 will release in September, an actor claims. Tony Todd, I promise you all know who Tony Todd is. If you haven't seen the man personally, you have at least heard his voice. He's going to be playing Venom in the upcoming Insomniac-developed sequel, seemingly broke protocol on Tuesday by telling a fan that Spider-Man 2's release month looks like September. This is the same release window publishing sources have recently told VGC to expect the game. Essentially kind of confirming what everyone more or less knows, is that internally this is scheduled for September. It might get pushed. September is already a very crowded month, so you might want to delay it a month to get out of the way of certain bigger titles coming out. I don't want to say bigger titles because Spider-Man's huge, but if you can get some oxygen, all the better, even if you are a huge game like Spider-Man. Tony Todd said the following, or at least wrote on Twitter, I should say. Looks like September. Massive publicity coming in August. Commercials start dropping in August, so I'm told. Hold on to your ellipsis and hold your breath. Gonna be necessary, Todd wrote. A September release for PlayStation's flagship game would put it up against Xbox's Starfield, which was recently confirmed for September 6. However, the wording to Todd's tweet could suggest PlayStation window isn't set in stone, so it could also theoretically be shifted to give both titles distance. Or, given the fact that the Sony-Microsoft bickering over the Activision deal seems to be getting more and more personal with every month, I wouldn't be surprised if Sony tries to release Spider-Man 2 up against Starfield to see if it can't take some of that money. I don't know if that's a wise move, but Sony and specifically Insomniac seem to be in ascendance when it comes to their games. Spider-Man was a huge seller, and Sony has had hit after hit after hit lately with Horizon Zero Dawn and God of War Ragnarok, but Horizon Forbidden West rather, and God of War Ragnarok ranking up impressive sales figures. Whereas Bethesda Game Studios, they're big, but they're not the shining star they once were. Bethesda jank is a term for a reason. Fallout 76, while still running and still somewhat successful, was nowhere near the level of polish and praise that it should have gotten for being a Fallout game. Even Fallout 4, the most recent mainstay Bethesda game, the Bethesda Studios game, was kind of It wasn't bad, but it really failed to live up to the legacy of that franchise. And with so much hype behind Starfield, anything less than exceptional is going to be magnified as people take a really healthy dissection of this game to tear it apart and look for any flaws, because that is just what is expected from Bethesda now. It's kind of a rod they built for their own back. They've set their own expectations too high for a studio that, let's be real here, never really produced anything all that exceptional to begin with, or at least hasn't for a better part of a decade at this point. They're mainly relying on nostalgia than anything actually tangible right now, and that studio is no longer what it once was. I know we all know the Ship of Theseus example due to WandaVision, but that's kind of what's going on here. To put it in better terms, they're a little bit like BioWare at this point, where they're kind of just a shell of their former selves. I know Todd Howard's still there doing Todd Howard stuff, but given his recent interview on the Lex Friedman podcast, how he was even cagey about saying it might be stuck at 30 frames per second, that's unacceptable in today's age, Todd. I wouldn't be surprised if Spider-Man 2 does get launched up against Starfield deliberately because Sony might smell blood in the water. And they might want to take even another chunk out of Xbox. A system that has really yet to have a major hit. The one that should have been a no-brainer for them, Halo Infinite, kind of a disaster for them. A good game still, but it's Halo. It shouldn't be just a good game. It should be excellent. So I would not be surprised at all if Spider-Man comes out within a week of Starfield. Now, they, like I said, wouldn't be surprised if they delayed it either, but I can see Sony trying to punch Microsoft in the dick real quick on this one, because there is only so much money to go around, and people will be forced to pick between Spider-Man 2 and Starfield if they release them back to back. And I think more people might actually go with Spider-Man, at least when it comes to pure console sales. Keep in mind, Starfield is also going to be on PC, whereas Spider-Man 2 won't necessarily be so. Hey, the Drag, good to have you. Anyways, let me know what you guys think about this Spider-Man versus Starfield down below. What one would you be going with? Which one do you think would be doing better, etc.? Yeah, I think more people are with you, Dry. I think more people would go Spider-Man as well. I'm a jackass. I'm playing both of them. But I am in a position where I get to do that, fortunately. Moving on to the next story here, we're going to stick with Video Game Chronicle. Ubisoft is developing an AI tool that aims to support scriptwriters. Now, it's not as a prominent role as you might think, and it actually kind of makes sense that they would be doing this. So hold off on your Ubisoft laziness until we get a little bit farther in the story here. To the article itself. According to the publisher, Ubisoft Ghostwriter will be used to generate first draft of chatter of crowds and trigger NPC lines. While these sounds and phrases are essential to emerging players in the game world, Ubisoft is said to be using AI to do so will enable its narrative teams to work on less repetitive tasks. What they mean here is they're not talking about how they're going to be writing dialogue that like the main character is going to be having with the side character. What they're talking about is when you're walking around the streets in Watch Dogs, or if you're sneaking through a city in Assassin's Creed and it's like a marketplace and all people are talking back and forth with each other. As it stands right now, you have to have people writing dialogue for all those people in there, for every character in those. And it's mind-numbing work, where you have to essentially have 50 different variations of, hi, hello, how are you? I'm doing good. Great. How much for this? And it just takes time, and you have to have someone come in and record the lines, and it's a lot of extra work for something that people aren't even going to really be paying attention to. Now, if you have an AI write some of that stuff, you can get some really stupid responses where someone comes up to someone and goes, hi, and their person goes, hi, and their person goes, hello, and their person goes, hi, and it could get like stuck in a little loop at times. But it's going to lift the burden off of just writing essentially garbage dialogue to make it feel like it's a lived-in city. This is where I think AI actually can be used and used to great effect. Because who cares what two people sitting on a bench are talking about when they're talking about their day? Because I'm telling you right now, if you just sit there and listen to their dialogue loop, it's not going to be much more improved at all if a human wrote it. So this is something that I think is actually a good use for AI in an art form as far as that goes. Back to the article here itself. Once again, this is from Video Game Chronicle, link posted down below. The technology has been created by Ubisoft LaForge, or LA Forge. Is it LaForge or LA Forge? I'm going to say LaForge. The research and development team armed with the Assassin's Creed publisher. The Ubisoft wrote the following description in a little teaser video that they had for it. By the way, I'd recommend taking a look at that teaser video. The link is in this article here. The following description. Introduce an Ubisoft Ghostwriter, an AI tool developed in-house that aims to support its scriptwriters by generating the first draft of our NPC marks, the phrases and sounds made by the NPCs when players interact in the game world. This tool was created hand-in-hand with scriptwriters to create more realistic dialogue in NPC interactions by generating varied pieces of dialogue. See how our teams will use AI to handle I can say this word. repetitive tasks and free up time to work on other core game elements. Cool. I'm fine with this. I know everyone's knee-jerk reaction when it comes to AI is to fear it, and you are right to do so, to be fair. However, not all of it is doom and gloom. This is one of those cases where it can actually save a lot of time and money that can be reinvested back into the game itself to give it a little bit of extra polish, or maybe a couple extra lines of dialogue, or maybe a few extra takes from the actor's booth to make it really more fitting to what's going on. This is a good time saver, in my opinion. Hard cut to the next story here, once again touching about my beloved XCOM and how I am going to be more sad face. A few weeks ago, we reported that Jake Solomon and a few other people were going to be leaving for Axis Games to form their own studio. And my mind was thinking, okay, great. If they're not going to, if 2K Games isn't going to let them make their own XCOM, they can make their own XCOM with blackjack and hookers. But Jake Solomon's coming out here and saying he's probably not going to be making an XCOM-like game. To the article here via IGN. XCOM legend Jake Solomon says he probably won't make another turn-based strategy game. Sad face. Let me blow this up a little bit more so people looking at home can read it. Former Firaxis director Jake Solomon said he wants to start his studio, but it most likely won't be another turn-based strategy game. He recently worked as director for Marvel Midnight Suns and the XCOM franchise. On an episode of the podcast My Perfect Console, Solomon explained the following. After I made Midnight Suns, I looked at it. Okay, am I going to make another turn-based strategy game? Am I excited about that? End quote. He continued on saying, I found that I wasn't excited about doing another turn-based strategy game. Not because the genre isn't amazing, it's where I spent my life, but I felt like I didn't have anything more to say in that area. Totally get it. You're burnt out on it. You've been creating these kind of games since when did that first XCOM game come out? 2008? That's when it launched. So I don't mean the very first one. I mean of the rebooted franchise. So you've been working on that probably since 2005. That means almost 20 years making the same genre. I get you. I'd be burned out too. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like he's going to be branching off too far from that route. Because as he goes on in the article, he says the following. When asked what kind of game he'd make, Solomon said he'd most likely create a simulation game rather than a turn-based strategy one. Awesome. Now, simulation is a little bit of a loaded term. What do you mean by simulation? Do you mean something like SimCity? Do you mean something like Thief or Deus Ex? You know, what's the immersive sim style genre? Do you mean something like XCOM, X-Wing, or Wing Commander, like a space sim? Do you mean a walking sim? We don't know. And thus highlighting how irrelevant genres are becoming in games today as everything slowly starts blurring together and taking elements of everything and throwing them together. Either way, I am looking forward to whatever Jake Solomon does next. He has my faith that he is going to make something great, given the fact that XCOM 1 and 2 were excellent, and even Marvel Midnight Suns, which is buggy as hell, and I had some issues with, was still worth the time I put into it. So I am willing to take a look at whatever he comes up next, and I wish him the best in his ventures. We're going to wrap up the show here today with one more bit of news, and this one really, really sucks. This broke a couple days ago via TMZ here. The Wire star Lance Reddick dead at 60. Now, if you don't know who Lance Reddick is, if you don't recognize him by his picture here, I promise you've heard his voice. When it comes to TV and films, he was in John Wick, The Wire, Oz as well, I believe. But he was also a rather prolific voice actor, being in some of the biggest video game franchises out there, including as the role of Silence from Horizon Forbidden West and Horizon Zero Dawn, as well as Commander Zavala from Destiny 2, a central linchpin character to that game's narrative, I might add. His death is going to be greatly affecting both of those games because I do not see either team recasting him. Now, Horizon has an upcoming expansion coming out, Burning Shores. I'm sure that all the motion capture and voice acting would be done with that, so if Silence happens to appear in that game, that story will be intact. As far as Destiny 2 goes, that's a live service game. Who knows what might get upended because of his death. And like I said, I doubt that they will recast him. Also, look at that man. 60. I want to look that good when I'm 40. Jesus Christ. Going on to the article here from TMZ. Law enforcement sources tell TMZ that to the top here. Lance Reddick, famous for his work on HBO's The Wire and the John Wick movie franchise, has died, TMZ has learned. Law enforcement sources tell TMZ Lance's body was discovered at his Studio City home Friday morning around 9:30 a.m. His cause of death is currently unclear, but our law enforcement sources say it appears to be natural. Could have been a heart attack, could have been an aneurysm. Who knows? Sometimes people do just die. It is a pretty big blow when it comes to video games. Even more so to anyone who is a fan of friends and family. I don't want to diminish any of that stuff. He was someone's husband. I believe he had children, friends, etc. But to keep things focused on the industry itself, he played a lot of critical roles. And he did seem to be just kind of like an awesome person from what people who've interacted with him have said. He was one of those actors that was always willing to take time out and speak with his fans. So it sucks when someone seemingly good dies. And that's that. That wraps up the final story, which wraps up the show as well. This has been GamePoints episode 351, and thank you all for showing up. We do stream this live here at Twitch TV/GamePoints every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, so please feel free to come by and join the conversation. Can't watch us live, however, a copy of this show does go up on any myriad of video hosting platforms, Rumble, YouTube, BitChute, etc. You can also watch it over on our Discord server link provided down below, as well as all the stories we talk about today. Their links are posted down below as well. I recommend you all read them too, just so you get the full story. I do only skim them when I'm here. I'll be back throughout the week playing miscellaneous games, but until then, y'all take care, and I will see you next time.